Yeah.
You still in school?
No, I got rid of that.
You got rid of it a second time.
Yeah,
Temporary one, second
It
time.
hasn't come back to me yet. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, doing all right.
Family, all right?
Yeah, seem to be.
It seems to be, well, you're never there.
It feels like that. No.
Really, no, didn't it?
Yeah.
You got to school?
Oder kannst du bitte eventuell den Juli?
Yeah, were they successful?
Yeah, I mean,
Waren wir nicht geworden. Und füllen nicht mit unseren Beiträgen auf und wenn sich mit was machen wir halt nicht.
Also grundsätzlich.
so she gets the last
Ja, ein bisschen.
Yes, I gave it a condition.
Ja. Nein,
Yeah,
ich will es nur
condition.
It's horrible, isn't it?
Ja, das war jetzt ein bisschen doof, das war von der Leuten, vor allem Stefan und
He has congenital highs, the hands, also congenital complaint.
die auch
He's had it since birth, but then unbeknownst to myself and my wife, we're both carers. So just my daughter's got free.
Also natürlich jetzt
So I do stress the it's occupational.
aber wir mussten halt nehmen zum einen natürlich mit dem drumherum, diesen Wegen und machen wir halt diesen tollen Event auf dem Campus und dann ist das natürlich zum Schluss auch immer oben.
Yeah.
Socializen.
So,
Man muss schon sagen, ich habe schade, dass ich das nicht wirklich gekriegt
ja.
habe. Das halt,
Jetzt ist er ja
als electoral specialist, or is that local?
Yeah, so it's in London, Chelsea.
Ja, das. Ja, that's the house justice would go. We have
Yeah, we have come from this, go to Moorfields. There's nobody else in such a, it's like two specialists.
Yeah.
And he's now 16, but he's still doing the Michigan's this one. He's got ED.
So that's why I get myself.
But yes, we're in the city.
I like talking to you both topics. I was thinking.
You were thinking.
It's good. No, you don't. Du von seinem Chat.
Die Tage sind relativ schwankend, das hängt dann groß ist.
I listen to you. That's a compliment. I'm taking it from Abby Schmeiss. There was an empty level. UK level. UK level. It's kind of nobody's level. They left. You heard of the King Days in Absolutely. Chandler was a terrorist. We don't argue.
Das war ja der
Do exactly the same like everybody else. We don't argue.
mit Berlin.
International law. That was my. It's
Ich fand es super, aber.
because it was not.
Das fand ich auch ein bisschen schade, weil sie wirklich mit so viel Herzblut und Engagement gemacht haben und die Destination
Whatever decision, given the obstacles of student powers, we go for our government. And of course, the other.
Yeah, exactly.
And people stay not for those And then there was a war, which was a ceasefire. So, doing Israel did something on 23rd Wednesday. The ceasefire agreement. Let's see, there is a stuff.
So, good morning. Welcome to my, let's say, companion presentation. I presented another paper yesterday that used the same data set, but this time the lineup is a bit different, and I want to explain the composition of the group before I start with my presentation. Alice is a postdoc at the University of the Hemispheres in Quito, in Ecuador. I met her at your conference in October for the first time. And when we talked about the project, she was so enthusiastic that I asked her to join the team of authors, and all the progress the project has made since then is to be attributed to her time and effort. Nikolaus Risch was for 12 years president of the University of Paderborn. I had the privilege of working together with him as a vice president for more than 7 years. And he opened the doors to do that certainly unusual online survey using two different types of access. So Nikolaus is also on the board of the German University Sports Association, Allgemeiner Deutscher Hochschulsportverband, that's the German expression. And he convinced the other board members to put the link to the online survey on the website of the association, and therefore elite athletes are oversampled in our data set. And by intention, because very little is known in Germany about dual career students. Dual career students are people studying at the same time, pursuing an elite sport career. And Nikolaus, as the president of the University of Paderborn, convinced many of his colleagues all over Germany, again, to put the link to our online survey on the website of these institutions. So that helped us to collect a data set with nearly 5,000 completed interviews. It is, of course, now a stylized fact that physical activity has a positive impact on individuals' mental health and subjective well-being. We do not know very much about the impact of physical activity on these dimensions of well-being for subgroups of the population. And therefore, we were particularly interested in collecting data on students enrolled at German universities and universities of applied sciences. When you look at the so-called happiness literature, Journal of Happiness Studies, for example, the papers published therein typically use panel surveys that are representative of the respective country's population, be it the German socioeconomic panel, be it the British household panel, or whatever you can think of. These data sets do have one particular advantage. They are longitudinal in nature. Our data is cross-sectional, and therefore we are hesitant to interpret our findings as causal, but we find significant correlations between different of the variables that we are particularly interested in. I apologize for the use of a particular term. Stefan has already told me that this is pejorative. We distinguish 3 different groups of students according to their level of physical activity. I will explain in detail how we operationalize couch potatoes, recreational and elite athletes. But these are the 3 different groups of students that we will compare. And the questions we asked are as follows. Do couch potatoes, recreational and elite athletes differ in their levels of effective well-being or happiness? Do these three types of students differ in their levels of cognitive well-being or life satisfaction? And finally, do these three groups of students differ in their risk preferences and attitudes? Life satisfaction, happiness, as well as risk preferences are measured using an 11-point Likert scale, like in all these panel studies that I've mentioned a minute ago, ranging from 0 to 10, with indicating higher levels of happiness, life satisfaction, and risk tolerance. Again, ideally, one would use longitudinal information. Such data is, especially when it comes to subgroups of the population like students, extremely difficult to obtain, and therefore we resort to cross-section data, and I will explain that data in a minute. As I already indicated, cross-section data cannot be used to infer causal effects. In this particular context, the reason is obvious. Either you try to convince the audience that physically active people are happier, more satisfied, and more risk tolerant, or you try to convince the audience that happy people, satisfied people, and risk tolerant people are more likely to be physically active. And clearly, to distinguish what is cause and what is effect is the main challenge here. And in order to get a step further in that direction, we include motivational variables in our estimations in order to hold constant the motivation, the discipline, the stamina, etc., that inspires athletes. And this may also raise life satisfaction and happiness. So in order to do that, we use a short validated version of the Big Five personality inventory. And I will come to the 17 statements that we use in this context in a minute. First of all, I'd like to show you where these universities and universities of applied sciences are located. You can see it's spread all over the country, from far northeast, Greifswald, to far southwest, Freiburg. Those of you who are familiar with the education landscape in Germany immediately will recognize some universities that you would like to see on this landscape are missing. None of the Berlin universities and none of the Munich universities is included, simply because Nikolaus could not convince the presidents and rectors at these institutions to join the survey. This has one slight disadvantage. Women are overrepresented in our sample because universities with large technical faculties are underrepresented. So we don't have many mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, or physics or chemistry students in our sample. Distribution, elite athletes, couch potatoes, recreational athletes. How did we measure that? That is pretty simple to explain. We have two different questions in that questionnaire. First question is, do you play sports? Yes, no. And those answering no are considered couch potatoes. And the second question is, how many hours per week do you play sports? The couch potatoes, by definition, 0. And among the recreational athletes, there's a broad range from 1 hour to up to 15 or 16 hours. That means 2 hours per day. And among the recreational athletes, the spread is even larger. We have
So when you say sports, what does that include? Does it include, say, recreational swimming or
Yeah.
walking? Or
Yep.
what was it? So it wasn't just do you play sports? Was there a list?
Yeah. We have a list of 55 or 60 different sports. So we can distinguish between team sports and individual sports. We can distinguish between, let's say, money sports and no money sports. But these things are completely irrelevant when it comes to estimating the model. So individuals doing team sport are not happier or not more satisfied or not more risk tolerant than those engaged in individual sports. But we do have the, how do you call it? We know the discipline they are engaged in.
Yeah, just to pick up on that point, I was just wondering, because there is some literature, isn't it, that identifies differences for the type of sport. So I wonder whether this is unique to obviously college students, because maybe they're doing an individual sport, but they're doing it recreationally with their mates anyway. So that kind of collective feeling is already captured. I don't know whether that's...
Well, many of them do the sport at university.
Yes.
And clearly they do individual sports together. They run together or something like that.
What does it mean when they say no? And they say no, they don't do any of these things. Are you saying they have no physical activity at all? Or what are they doing?
We have to rely on the answers provided by these people. If they say they don't do any sport.
But walking to the university, isn't it considered like physical activity? 20 minutes, 30 minutes each.
Walking to the pub last night? That was-
No, see, if you walk to the university from your apartment, you do that at a speed that does not bring you into sweating, because your neighbor will have to smell that during lecture. But if somebody says, I walk fast twice per week, then we would consider that as sport.
The question is, do you do a sport in the past week, the past month, or?
In the past week.
Because seeing the German map, it may matter. It's in summer first, right? I don't know. They are all in the university in the summer, during the summer. That might matter. But the fact that you maybe in the north, it was still cold, or in the south, I don't know if, did you do sport last week? No, because in Freiburg, I think it's up there. It was cold. I didn't answer it was cold. I just didn't do any sport because I couldn't. While in the south, you could.
The survey was done in May and June. So most likely the weather was quite similar all over the country.
All over the country.
Yeah.
June would have been outside the football season, so wouldn't it? So if you played football for a team regularly, you would have said no, right?
No, but you still go to training sessions during that.
Some, not all.
Yeah, but somebody who plays regularly football would not in such a survey say, I don't do sport. They would recall how many hours.
Did you do sport in the last week?
Yeah. But even if the season is over, these people would recall what they had done in May or so towards the end of the
But
season.
then they're not answering the question, did you do it in the last week?
Sure. But that is one of the problems that you always have when you do a survey study. You can never use a wording that everybody understands in the same way. People typically interpret the questions they are being asked in one way or another. And that is one of the weaknesses of survey studies that we have been.
But you might check whether the answer from students that you did the survey in May are in some sense different than those in June, because it might matter. I was training in the, I don't know, whatever team in May last week, but in June I'm done.
Oh, that's a good point. We know the exact date of the interview, when the interview was completed. That's a good point. We haven't done that so far. Yeah.
But you just can compare the characteristics of those who said no in June and
Yeah.
those who said no in May.
Yeah.
To see whether there are different.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks a lot. And then how do we distinguish recreational and elite athletes? The second question was, do you compete in your respective sport? And if the answer is no, that person is a recreational athlete. If the person said yes, but only at the local or regional level, we continue considering that person a recreational athlete. And if the respondent says, I compete in national or international championships, we classify him or her as an elite athlete. And that is completely indifferent. That's completely independent of the type of sport or the kind of sport. So there are apparently professional triathletes in the sample, but there are also people competing in national championships in archery, rowing, whatever. And we consider all these elite athletes. Whether that's adequate or whether that's a problem, we have been playing around with different classifications, but that leaves the findings basically unaffected. So if you only include those who do international competitions, then the effects become even larger. So when you compare, that's just descriptive, when you compare the responses to the question about life satisfaction, taking everything together, how would you say how satisfied you are with your life at the moment? You see that responses at the right tail of the distribution are larger than among the couch potatoes and the recreational athletes. This distribution is similar to what you find in general in studies using data from the general population. So this is not at all surprising, but this seems to suggest already that elite athletes are happier than the rest of the population. And the interesting thing is that is not in line with findings presented by Pamela Vicker and co-authors who have used a similar survey, but compared the findings from their survey with findings from the German socioeconomic panel for the same age group. But our findings come, as I said, from one and the same survey. Happiness, once more, higher scores are more prevalent among elite athletes. And finally, risk tolerance. When you look at recent studies using the German socioeconomic panel, what you find is the average risk tolerance among women in the German population is 4.5. Again, using this 11-point Likert scale, and for men, it's 5.5. In our sample, it's considerably higher. This has to do that younger people are more risk tolerant than older people, and this is a subsample of young German population. But the interesting thing is, when it comes to risk tolerance, elite athletes, female elite athletes are not any different from male elite athletes. So the self-selection into an elite sport apparently requires a high level of risk tolerance already. And when you compute the average values by student types, this may seem not that large, these differences, but they are always highly significant. And here you see the items of the Big Five personality index or inventory that we have included in the questionnaire. I'm not going to read all these things, but in many cases, the differences are not only statistically significant, but also pretty large. So when it comes to the statement, I have a positive self-image, elite athletes score about 20% higher than couch potatoes, and there are other statements. I'm a sociable person, 3.19 compared to 3.7 7.4.
What is significance? Is it joint significance? Because we have 3 groups. What is this?
It's always the joint significance. Surely you can test it pairwise.
It's interesting to compare coach potatoes to also. This is also interesting. But like pairwise comparisons.
I can do that. I haven't done that so far, but sure. Or here I'm a reserved person, 3.26, 2.69. So with some of the statements, there are massive differences, and in other cases, they are a bit smaller. The point here is you cannot enter these 17 statements as predictors in a regression model to explain the observable difference in life satisfaction, happiness, or risk preferences. So what we did is we did a principal factor analysis, and after rotation, we ended up with these results. So we are able to perfectly replicate this big 5 personality inventory. Factor 1 is called extraversion. Factor 2 is openness to new experience, conscientiousness, neuroticism, agreeableness. I think all these factors are basically self-explaining. And when you look for rules of thumb in the statistics literature, typically the recommendation is you should not interpret factor loadings that are below 0.4. And as you can see here, the lowest one that we end up with is 0.525. So these loadings are extremely high. And the results confirm previous studies very convincingly. And we use the factor scores to explain observable differences in happiness, life satisfaction, and risk preferences, because these factor scores are completely uncorrelated. The largest correlation that we observe between these factors is 0.2. And kernel density estimations reveal that the distributions are indeed completely different. I'm not going into the details of these differences, but you can see the personalities of elite athletes are completely different from the personalities or the mental attitudes and dispositions of both couch potatoes and recreational athletes. When it comes to the factor agreeableness, the differences are quite small. With respect to the other 4 dimensions, that's different. So models 1, 3, and 5 estimate the impact of physical activity on happiness, life satisfaction, risk tolerance, while models 2, 4, and 6 also include the differences in personalities. And you see that in both cases, including the personality differences, reduces the magnitude of the coefficients considerably, suggesting that elite athletes, as well as recreation athletes, have different personalities than couch potatoes. Elite athletes are significantly happier, and this 0.7 difference means they are 10 percentage points happier, but that effect is reduced to less than half of the initial effect once we control for personality. So extraversion, openness, conscientiousness, neuroticism, and agreeableness all have a significant impact on happiness. However, the impact of openness is particularly large, and the impact of neuroticism is, although statistically significant, very small. And the same applies when we look at life satisfaction. Here again, the effect of openness to new experience is particularly large, as is the case when it comes to risk tolerance. The interesting thing with the risk tolerance model is that the two physical activity dummies lose their statistical significance once we control for personality differences. And that is the result that I referred to earlier. So women are significantly less risk tolerant than men. However, once we control for personality differences, that effect disappears. Delay is a dummy variable. I am delayed with my academic program. I am behind schedule. So these people are less happy, less satisfied, but that has no effect on risk tolerance. Study hours per week, training hours per week, whether somebody has spent a semester abroad or not. Sure. Yeah. What we see is people who have spent a semester abroad report higher levels of risk tolerance. That is not that surprising. And we have added a couple of the coefficients of a couple of control variables simply to see whether our results are in line with those reported in the previous literature. And you can see that family status has a massive impact on all the three variables, on risk tolerance as well as life satisfaction and happiness. And all these coefficients are in line with the ones reported in the previous literature. We do not find an effect of my ethnic minority background, except when it comes to risk tolerance. So apparently, people with a migration background are more risk tolerant than the German population, which again is not that surprising. I do not report the coefficients for field of study, degree, education father, education mother, simply because that would extend the table massively. Degree is important here because we have bachelor students, master students, as well as PhD students in our data set. Yep, I'm done. So I'm not reading these out. Thanks for your attention. I'm looking forward to your questions and comments.
Questions obviously during the presentation. So a couple of minutes for questions and then Alex. Any time for maybe two.
This one?
Maybe deeply related with happiness and life satisfaction.
So the reference group are married people, and therefore single with partner associated with a lower level of happiness, life satisfaction. So being married makes you happier.
But these many students you have married, these are students that are.
Oh, more than 10% of the people are married already. Yeah, does marriage make you happy, or have happy people a higher probability of finding a partner? There is some literature on that. Bruno Frey has published several papers on that, and they failed to reach a completely convincing conclusion. So whether being married drives happiness or happiness drives the probability of being married is still an unanswered question.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I was just wondering a little bit about where you take these results now. I could see there's an argument, for example, investing in sport in universities, and that might be connected with this employability, performance, so on. In the context of this and looking at these outcomes, Why were the universities interested? What was the kind of main motivation for the study in that sense? Other than it was just, obviously, to contribute to literature about the engagement of sport, but particularly in the university context and the athlete context.
First of all, very little is known about the, let's say, life situation in general of German university students, and when it comes to different types of students with respect to physical activity, nothing is known so far. And that was what drove our interest. Clearly, since one of the co-authors is on the board of the German University Sports Association on the one hand, at the same time, he's the head coach of the German national orienteering team. His interest is to document that investments in university sport are likely to pay off.
You know, as much as I love sport, I guess study is incomplete if you don't consider other activities that students might enjoy similarly to sports, like, you know, theater or music, or because maybe you just don't like sports, but you enjoy music as much as someone who does football. So I think in terms of where to invest, you know, the study in that sense cannot really answer the question. Whether it's
So that's an important point. We have the same questions on playing music in the data. And we find the music effects to be far, far smaller than the sports effects.
What it is has the highest score in terms of imaginativeness and artistic. About what it is has the highest score in imaginativeness and artistic orientation.
Yeah, sure. No, but the contribution of playing music at a recreation level in the university orchestra, for example, or performing being a professional musician already, while still at university, is far, far smaller. The percentage of people being professional musicians or recreational musicians is smaller than the percentage of recreational athletes or professional. I think we'll wrap it. Thanks very much.
Okay, so I'll continue with things I have never experienced. Today we spoke about menstruation. Today I will speak about ski jumping. So let's see. And as I told, I don't even ski. Okay, but that's very cool data. So really suggest to investigate those things. So this is a joint paper with Felix Soto and Tim Pawlowski from the University of Tübingen. We are close to have a working paper, so any comment is more than welcome. And it's about nominal illusion and loss aversion. So let's see. So for those of you who might not be familiar with the loss aversion, this is, and I don't believe there are such people here, this is really a fundamental feature in economic behavior, right? Starting from Kahneman and Tversky. So generally speaking, losses are more painful than gains are enjoyable. If I lose $1, I suffer more than if I gain $1. Then if I enjoy less from gaining $1, then I will suffer from losing $1. No, that's correct. So people who are slightly above their goal, and we are talking now about a certain reference point. So those people in an ongoing task will exert more effort to avoid the loss of eventually falling short than those who are currently slightly below the goal. Now, also, the farther you are from the reference point, the less effort you will exert. Right? I always give this example of, let's say, bus. If the bus is like 20 meters from me and it should now go away, I will run. But if I'm like 100 meters from the bus, I will not even bother. But generally speaking, understanding how distance from the reference point affects effort provision, because this paper is probably about effort provision, I hope. This is really an important question in economics and in management. So the one thing we're talking is loss aversion reference point. The second thing we're talking in this paper is about nominal illusion. So when I speak with my wife, she says, look, everything became so much more expensive. Really, everything like 10, 20%. But I said, but you also gain more money. Your salary is much higher. So, but we are driven by this nominal illusion, right? And although I think in the long term, we understand that real values, these are the values that matter, but in the short term, these nominal values drive our behavior. And probably people might overweight these nominal prices. So we refer to this nominal anchor that is used as a reference point. And there were so many papers about it. We can talk about property, real estate, CEOs, and so on and so on. But there are papers that say, look, nominal illusion is nice, but we think it's largely overestimated. The effect of nominal illusion is largely overestimated. Now, what I was talking about, and usually those papers on nominal illusion, they discuss nominal versus real monetary values. So we're talking about financial incentives or money, right? The prices are higher, the bonus is higher, the price of the house is higher or lower. So it's about monetary values. In this paper, we'll do something different. So we will investigate the effect of nominal illusion of non-monetary values on the loss aversion mechanism in effort provision. So what's the story? If nominal illusion plays a role, then this may affect the expectations regarding my distance from the reference point. So if I'm not sure, so if nominal illusion can affect my perception of where I am compared to the reference point, this may affect my effort provision via loss aversion mechanism. Okay? Now, but the problem is that nature rarely creates an opportunity to observe a clear view of the effect of nominal illusion on loss aversion mechanisms. And I borrowed this sentence from Ignacio Palacios Huerta, who always tries to motivate the usage of and he makes it very nicely, the usage of sports data to study economic behavior. So really, nature rarely creates an opportunity to study different things. And therefore, it's not really surprising that this relationship between loss aversion, two super important things in economics, like loss aversion and nominal illusion, are not, we don't know much about them. But luckily, there are sports competitions. And in this paper, we utilize data from sports competition where highly professional and athletes perform in real competitive environment for high monetary prizes. And for that, we exploit a change in ski jumping competitions. So I am pretty sure that not everyone here understands and knows ski jumping competitions, but how does it work? So first, there is a qualification round. Like 70, 80 people try to compete for the right to be in the top 50. So the top 50 go to the main event. And in the main event, you have, so top 50 advance to the main event. And then the top 30 in the main event, in the first round of the main event, advance to the second round. Now, the result of the qualification round do not matter when they start. The most important is to be among the top 50 to be here. And then they start from zero. But given that the top 30 advance to the second round, being in the top 30 in the qualification gives you some expectations, provide you with some expectations of where you are relative to the cutoff point of qualifying or not. Although it doesn't really matter. If you finished 49 in the qualification, you are in the first round and you start from zero. But this creates some expectations about your ability. And the interesting point is as follows. Before the change, before 2017 season, the top 10 athletes did not have to participate in the qualification. They were automatically pre-qualified to the main event. So the remaining people had to compete for additional 40 slots. Yeah, because top 50 advance, top 10, they don't care, they qualify automatically, and then the next people qualify. Now in the qualification, those who are ranked number 1, actually they are number 11. Those who are ranked number 20, actually they are number 30, right? So this is something to understand. After the rule of change, everyone has to compete in the qualification. So what happens is that top 10 have to complete for the right to qualify for the main event. And then somebody who is ranked 30 in qualification, he is actually number 30. He is both nominally and really, effectively, he is number 30. Compared to this case, before the change, the one who finished qualification number 20, that is nominally he was 20, but effectively he was 30. And he realizes that he's 30, but he finished 20. This may or may not affect his expectations regarding his chances of qualifying, okay? That's kind of the thing. That's what we investigate. We want to see whether you are really 30 nominally and really has a different probability on qualifying compared to this case where you finish 20, but in fact you are 30 because the top 10 are above you. That's the story here.
So,
Yeah.
So the top 10 in the before the rule change, they don't jump.
Most of the times they don't jump. Yeah, they don't. They just skip it.
So what happens if they do jump? Does their rank not count?
So
Does not count.
that's not count.
They have the right to start.
Yeah.
To jump.
To test the hill, for example, but their results do not count.
But if they do jump, then you also, everybody else has some indication of where what their actual rank is, right?
Look, in the
So
end,
you may know both.
in the end, they understand that they are 30. They do understand this. Because I know that if I finish 20 in qualification, that's nice. In the back of my mind, I know that there are 10 other people that are above me. But I finished 20, although I'm 30.
Yeah, but they say had the same information after the rule change if the top highest.
No, after the rule change, everybody jumps and every result counts. After the rule change, there is no such thing that I can skip. Everyone jumps.
Right, which generates a ranking.
Yeah.
Which you could also have before the rule change if the top 10 also.
But top 10, I don't think, did they even register the result? I don't think they even registered it. It's not count. They're out of the competition. They can't jump, but their result does not count because they're automatically in the first round.
Make it a bit more precise. If the event takes place in Austria, the top 10, if there are Austrian athletes among the top 10, you can assume they are familiar with the hill and they are less likely to take the jump. While, let's say, a Japanese athlete who is not familiar will do that.
But their result is not registered. That's the point.
But do athletes know?
This I don't know. I don't know. There is final ranking that everybody sees. Qualified rank 1. So or qualified number 20. I'm in the 20 place. But in the end, there will be number 30 on my kit. But I finished 20. It's officially I'm 20.
If you are standing in the landing area.
This is what I'm saying. So there's a centimeters of ramp, right? But if I know I'm 50 centimeters off this guy that I thought I could never get close to, that's very different from if I'm 10 meters away, right? Yeah. And I just feel that it's the actual absolute distance, right? But
No. Then I will explain how does it work. I will explain. So in other words, before the change, the reference point of being, again, the reference point is being 30 in the first round, but I create expectations about my distance from reference point based on the qualification result. Okay. Now, so before the change, the one who was 20 was actually 30. After the change, the one who was 30 was also 30 effectively. Okay. Now, just for those of you who by chance don't know the rules of ski jumping, so the aggregate point score is determined by the jumping distance and the style point. So it's both the distance and the points. The jumping distance is an objective performance measure and quantified in intervals of half meters. And this distance is converted to a point value. So 5 judges award style points for the execution of the jump, landing and outrun based on predefined judging criteria for every part of the jump. In my previous study with Felix and the team, we found that judges are biased in favor of their compatriots, and this nationalistic bias significantly correlates with corruption index of a country. So that's another result of ski. So ski jumping has very nice settings to investigate humans' behavior. So we collected data from World Cup competition starting from 2014-15 to 2019-20 seasons. So 3 seasons before the change, 3 seasons after the change. The COVID, several competitions were canceled. Yeah. So this is what we have before the change and after the change. There were slightly more competitions before the change than after the change because of the Olympic season. So they removed some competitions to prepare for the Olympic Games. Some competitions were removed because of the COVID after the change, obviously. So that's what we have. In total, we have 4,790 jumps. And we only concentrate on the first round. Okay? So we care whether, we ask whether those who are close to the cutoff of being 30 after qualification has a higher probability to advance to the next stage compared to those ranked 31 or close to the cutoff. We do different things. So yeah, just some descriptive statistics, not really interesting. So look at this. That's just more or less also descriptive statistics, I would say. The probability of qualifying, and we kind of cut it pre-event rank categories. We can see that before the change, there is so maybe after the change. After the change, we see that the probability of qualifying of those ranked 26 to 30 is really higher than those 31, 35, which is less pronounced here. But that's just to see maybe there is something going on. It's not it's nothing. Now here we can see the probability of qualifying. So there is a significant difference between probabilities of qualifying of rank 26 to 30 before the change compared to after the change. And I still refer it to just some descriptives because there is selection going on. We will discuss it now. But I see that something is going on. Before the change, those ranked after qualification 26-30 effectively ranked. 26-30 advanced to the next stage in 54% of cases compared to 65% of cases after the change. On the other hand, we see that there are also other differences in the top rank. So probably selection is going on. Why is that? So we do not really compare the same athletes before and after the rule change because some of the top athletes who were automatically pre-qualified before the change may exert in qualification less effort because they don't really care, and they may finish like on average, the athlete from the top 10 is ranked 5th before the rule change by definition because like from 1 to 10 they pre-qualified, so the average rank is 5. And after the rule change, an athlete from the top 10 is ranked on average 12th in qualification, probably because they don't really care. They just need to qualify and that's it. Now, and we can see really that before the change, so this is a World Cup standing points for pre-event rank groups. So we want to compare whether pre-event World Cup points, which is a measure of ability, differ between the groups. Yeah, this is really, we see lots of selection going on. Good news actually that there is no significant difference between before and after in the in the rankings of interest, but still we cannot really rule it out because you see 86 versus 110, although it's not statistically significant, it's still pretty large difference. So the idea of comparing before the change versus after the change, probably not a good idea. So we are very open about it. We cannot clearly rule out that there is selection, and we don't really compare the same types of athletes if you only concentrate on 29 before 30 ranking before the change versus 30 after the change. What we do, so our identification approach is to compare within the same period, 39 versus 30 after the change, and 31 versus 30 before the change. So we compare within each period to see whether this rule of having nominal and real values which differs before the change and which are the same after the change creates salience of the reference point of being close to the cutoff of being 30. Okay, and by the way, it's plausible to so the idea is that we assume, and we will show that that's the case, being 31 after qualification, being 30 after qualification, these are basically the same people. Okay, they should not differ. We will test it. So we go to regression discontinuity design. We compare athletes who are just above the cutoff after qualification of being 30 and just below, assuming that they are as similar as possible, but within each period. So here are some graphs, some polynomial degree of 3, degree of 0, and we see that after the change, something probably is going on. You see a big jump of probability of qualifying of number 30 compared to number 31. And here the jump is relatively small, but let's see whether there are significant levels and so on and so on. So we can see that. So we use different windows. First, we compare number 30 versus number 31. What is the probability of whether there is any difference in qualifying probability to the next stage? Before the change, when those guys who finished 20, but they actually were 30, they did not have significantly different probability of qualifying to the next stage compared to those who finished 21, but were actually 31. So regardless of the window, we took 30, 31, 29, 32, and then we used some data-driven approach to define the window. There's no significant difference in qualifying probability. So it does not really serve as a reference point when you don't understand that you are 30, or when you think you are 20, but you are actually 30. But after the rule change, when you're 30 both nominally and effectively, there is a very significant difference between qualifying probabilities of rank number 30 versus rank number 31, because they cannot say I finished 20, I finished 30 and I'm 30. Okay, so whatever we do, we find a significant difference between qualifying probability of those who are just above the cutoff and those who are just below the cutoff, but only in a period when the nominal and real values were the same. Just for you to show that there is no, so these are really the same athletes. So being 30 and 31, there is no significant difference in their World Cup standing points before the change, in their previous event rank. Regardless of the window we take, there is no difference in those just above and just below for both periods. So we really compare the same athletes, but luckily one was just above the cutoff and one was just below, or two just above, two just below. Okay, so we are fine in that regard. Of course, also density of the running variable seems like all is good here. Then we said, okay, let's say whatever it's written. 2 minutes. Okay, so then we did some continuity-based regression discontinuity approach, when we give different weights to those who are a bit far from the 30 and the higher weights to those who are closer. Doesn't matter. It's the same result. Then we said, you know what, let's do placebo cutoffs, because who knows, maybe also in 20, 10, 40, whatever, something is going on. No, if we take cutoff of 20 or cutoff of I don't know, 20, whatever cutoff we take, 20 or 25 or 35 or 40, there's no significant difference. So 30 is the one that matters, but only after the change. Then we said, you know what? Qualifying probability, it's relative. What's going on with absolute performance? So we took jumping distance points. And we see that in terms of the distance, there is no difference between 30 and 31 or 29, 32 before the change. But there is a significant difference in jumping this. So the absolute performance also is improved after the rule change, when we know that nominal and real values are the same. Then we said also on style points, we find more or less the same result. No difference before the change. There is difference after the change. So let's conclude. So let's conclude. So we find that performance has changed discontinuously at the reference point, as we should expect, where athletes with pre-event rank of 30 or slightly better perform significantly better than those ranked slightly below. But we observe this effect only after the rule change, when the nominal and real rankings were exactly the same. When the nominal and real rankings were different, we did not find that rank 30 serves as the reference point. So this suggests that even highly professional athletes are prone, and they understand that they are not 20. They understand they are 30, but something in the back of their mind gives them some hope that they are actually better than they are, maybe, I don't know. So this suggests that even highly professional athletes are prone to nominal value illusion, so which seem to distort the salience of an expectation-based reference point. So this study actually emphasizes the importance of the salience of the reference point. Yeah. So despite still, we have to be careful before generalizing the results of this study to other settings, because after all, it's only ski jumping, and you know, with all the things we should always say, right? But so still, the results suggest that nominal illusion is likely to affect the level of salience of a reference point, which in turn affects performance expectations and effort provision. So one implication is that managers should explicitly, rather than implicitly, emphasize information on the distance to the reference point. They have to say exactly how far you are from the reference point, and it's better to say that you are closer. Yeah, because if you will play games and will not be precise about the distance, the effort provision via loss aversion mechanism will probably not work. So yeah, thank you very much.
Questions?
Yeah.
You can certainly control for the age or the experience of the jumpers. But this illusion argument might be more important for upcoming youngsters than for experienced athletes, right? Or look at the stage of the season. In the first and second event, things might be different than in the 25th and 26th event.
Yeah, could be. I'm not sure I can do any causal analysis for this, because the RDD setting tells me, look, you should be very precise about what you're doing. 29, if, for example, if you say, look, Alex, you show that they are as similar as possible in all the characteristics you show, but from the point of view of age, maybe by some chance, those who are ranked 30 and slightly better are older or younger, or they differ in terms of age. Then I have a problem.
By using data from the first half of the seasons, the second half.
Yeah. This I can do. Yeah, no problem.
Alex, can
Yeah.
I ask a question? So you said that obviously, in terms of qualification, all that matters is getting into the top 30.
So in qualification, what matters is to get into top 50,
Right, top 50.
and then to be in the top 30
For the
to the second stage. Yeah.
But in terms of the order of the jumps, what determines that? So obviously, does the qualification matter
Yeah,
in relation to when you jump in the first stage?
yeah, absolutely.
So how does that have an effect?
The worst, in both cases, there's no difference in that regard. In both cases, the worst one, like rank number 50 starts first. Rank number,
What happens with, sorry to interrupt, what happens with in the pre-event period? So the top 10, the 10 that don't have to jump,
yeah,
what determines when they jump?
their goodwill. But they just say, I will jump, and that's it.
No, sorry. If they automatically go to stage
To the first round, yeah.
Where did they jump?
Ah.
They always jump in the last 10.
They will jump in the last 10.
And what determines when they jump?
The qualification ranking.
Okay.
So rank number 50 starts first, rank 49 second, and so on. So the first rank jumps last. In both
if
before.
you're in the top 10.
Yeah.
If you're in the top 10 that you didn't have to pre-qualify,
Yeah.
so you didn't jump.
Yeah.
Yeah. What determines that order?
World ranking of the
So
top 10. Yeah.
Alex, there are two different types of competition. You have this strict inverse order, and you have these duels. And the winner advances to.
Yeah, we don't. No. It's only the usual World Cup or top 50. Not the 1-to-1, not the pairwise.
Okay, this is not included there.
Yeah. Only this. Yeah.
Okay.
No, otherwise
Yeah.
Yeah.
One more question. I'm sitting into my time, but it's fine. We started a couple of minutes late, but I promise you we'll still finish on time for lunch.
Stefan had a question.
No, I've got a cold. I need you to, I don't really get this, so you can explain it to me over lunch.
I'll give you a pill after that.
Any more questions? Time for one more.
Good. Thank you very much, guys.
Okay. I know we're getting close to lunch, so I'll try and make it as palatable as possible. So this is a slight departure for me in the sense that it's the first time I've done a dart study. So anybody who knows my history, I've done football, done rugby, done cricket, done Olympic sports, lots of team sports, very few kind of individual sports. But I grew up watching darts. I mean, that's what I tell my wife these days, why I sit watching darts, because it's research. I'm sure we've all done that as in our time. So essentially what I'm going to present here is the environment. Does the environment matter in terms of productivity? And the kind of motivation behind this obviously stems from what happened in 2020 when the pandemic started, and obviously lots of workers were, their employees were required to work from home. And as we all know, like in academia, hybrid working is always the normal. It's not the new normal, but lots of other kind of sectors, hybrid working is now kind of new normal. What we do know from the kind of general literature, so this is not specific relating to sport. Some of this is based on self-reported surveys. Some of this is based on randomized experiments in labs. But essentially, there's a range of papers which have looked at the impact of working from home on productivity. But the evidence is relative, is fairly mixed. So you have some positive studies. So Bloom was the seminal paper, perhaps in the QJE in 2015. Some more recent papers which also suggest a positive effect of working from home, usually along the lines of there's kind of fewer distractions, perhaps, well, unless you've got family at home. Counter to that, you've got studies which suggest a negative effect of working from home, and in particular, a negative effect in terms of potentially well-being, happiness, life satisfaction, and so forth. And then in some instances, just to draw your attention to the paper by Kuhn, adaptation. So it may be that performance initially is low, but performance improves over time. So the adaptation idea that's developed in the paper by Kuhn and colleagues is based on chess. And the idea there was that when chess players were competing online, the kind of cognitive performance drops, and they're making more errors, at least initially. But as more tournaments continued online, those errors were reduced over time. So some evidence of adaptation. That was a relatively recent paper in the UGA. So that's one dimension. That's the dimension I'm going to focus on mainly in this talk. We also know, James has gone now. I might have just taken him off the list of references here then because of that. And Jan's not here, so I should have taken him off as well. But nonetheless, we know there's a lot of studies looking at the impact of the crowd as a source of social pressure. It could have a negative effect on the visiting team, could have a positive effect on the home team, could have an effect on the referee, as we know. Just a collection of recent papers, including a very recent one by Jan in Economics Letters. That seems to be the go-to journal for these types of studies. That was a joke, it's fine, it doesn't matter. And then there's actually a couple of studies on darts relatively recently. This one I found yesterday, it's like just before the conference, which kind of put a slight fly in my ointment of my research, but only a little bit. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about these two dart studies. So essentially, what they look at is just the effect of the crowd. So it's kind of not much different from those team-based studies. Obviously, in sport like darts, the referee doesn't have a major impact that it could have in obviously team sports like football and rugby and cricket, for example. It's just basically there to bellow out the score. Essentially, there's very little evidence to suggest the referees actually matter in darts contests. So the two papers that I'm referring to here essentially look at the role of social pressure, just the role of social pressure. Although saying that, the Spiker and Otting paper, they do actually mention, and I'll talk about what we mean by the PDC home tour in a minute, essentially where players competed at home. They do very briefly mention it in the paper, but there's no focus on it at all. There's a paper. I was going to say bless you, but I think it was a sneeze. There's a table in the appendix where they just simply look at the difference in the averages and the checkout percentages during the PDC home tour versus the other tournaments. But their main focus, much like the Green paper, is on social pressure. So what happens when there's a crowd versus what happens when there's no crowd? And they suggest the crowds have a negative effect on player performance, at least in the Grieve paper. The Spilker and Otting paper suggests the same, but there's a lot of heterogeneity in terms of the players. So some players appear to be able to adapt better than others. So I'm going to show you some pictures. I'm going to show you some videos if I have time, just so you don't have to listen to me throughout. So what do we do? I use the word we, it's me. We're looking at three different settings. So much like the previous papers, we've got in-person with crowds, we've got in-person without crowds or simulated crowds of some form of noise. So physical crowds in present, but we also add the impact in relation to working from home or competing online. Okay, and just to get a sense of what's kind of going on here, I've got a couple of videos to show you. But again, in much the same way that Alex earlier had said, maybe the people in the audience don't know much about ski jumping, I suspect there are people in the audience that don't know very much about darts. So very simply, the way a darts match typically is played is that players take in turn to throw 3 darts at a board. This is the board on the left here. And typically the objective is for the player to be the first to reach 0. Not all matches start 5-1, but most of them do, certainly in the professional leagues that typically starts at 5-1. Now, to reach 0, you've got to check out. So that means you can't simply just get your score down to 0. You've got to finish on a double, so the outer ring or the bullseye in the middle. Okay. So you have to finish on a double to check out. And then once you've done that, obviously, then the game moves on and you play another leg, and sometimes legs develop into sets. Sometimes it's just the first to reach a number of legs. So what happened in darts? Well, I mentioned earlier about chess. So some chess tournaments took place online. Darts was another example where there were some tournaments that took place online. So we know about lots of other sports. They basically suspended or they cancelled events, they curtailed the seasons. What happened in darts, much in the same way as chess, there was the opportunity for players to compete at home. So they competed in their own homes. So they were genuinely working from home. And they had webcams and the events were streamed live. So to give you an idea of this, 2 videos to show you. I don't know how loud this will be. We'll see.
Yeah, you can't make that up. Oh, good covers. He's trying to stand in the people keeping distance.
So the 9 against his throw means that if he gets, there's the fewest number of darts you can throw to check out. It's like a big thing. He was also happy because his prize money associated with getting a 9 darter, but also that was the deciding leg of the match. So that's obviously in person with a crowd. Here is another example. This is playing at home. So you can get contrast between the two. Apologies for the picture quality.
123. Oh my word. For the first time in the home tour.
So again,
99, looks a bit scary.
Someone is
Well,
on the
exactly.
147 required.
How do they know that they are throwing the dart from the proper distance?
well, that's a very good question. I mean, no, based on trust. But
147. Luke, where did that come from?
So two examples of 9 dart finishes, but in 2 different environments. One in person with crowds, and one in the kind of home tournaments. And that's essentially what we're trying to pick up here is there a difference in terms of productivity and performance between these different locations? So what I do in terms of the data, we're just focusing on matches that took place in 2020, obviously the year of the pandemic. We're looking at match level data, looking at ranking and non-ranking tournaments. So I exclude what we call floor tournaments. So these are in person without crowds, but the setup is different. So we're excluding those. We're excluding matches that simply involve qualifiers and matches on the what we call the challenge and development tour. So these are essentially contests which involve players who have a PDC tour card. So they've already qualified for the PDC tour for that particular season. So that's determined by the end of January. So it's partly based on the performance in the previous year. Some of them can qualify through going to PDC Q school. So there's some slots available there. So we've got data. We look at analysing data from different sources here. So some of this is used for the productivity measures I'm going to show you in a minute. Some of it is used to get some of the player characteristics information as well. So to give you a kind of visuals. We all like visuals now to kind of set the scene. These are the events that we capture in the data set. The home tournaments, so the home tour 1, 2, and 3, these are the 3 dart averages. So what you can see there is that the 3 dart averages are much lower in those home tour tournaments versus the other tournaments. So this is in pretty much chronological order from start of the season to the end. So the World Championship actually covers the back end of 2019 because the World Championship starts in December and finishes in January. So the first 4 events here were in person with crowds. You've then got the home tour, the first one, and then these events all took place without crowds, and then you've got the home tour 2 and 3, and again matches that pretty much took place without any crowds present. So we're looking at essentially that I was going to say academic year, anyway, calendar year in terms of the darts tournaments.
94, 92.
So these are the 3 dart averages. So the accumulation of the match. So each 3 darts that a player throws, on average, what do they get? Okay. So you can see there's quite a lot of variation there, but what stands out is it's much lower for the home tour relative to the other.
The same athletes?
Yes, they are. There is a little bit of variation, which we then control for in the regressions I'll show you in a minute, because it could well be that some of these events, it's not could well be, it is, some of these events are kind of invitational. So like the Masters, you have to be in the top 16 to compete in that particular tournament. Some are more open. I mean, stands to reason, but UK Open is open to a wider range of players because there's more rounds to it.
So you have different numbers of competitors.
Yeah. And obviously the number of competitors might be determined by their rank prior to that tournament. I couldn't get it on stats. I don't know. Maybe I just can't think of things anymore. Here's some box plots of checkout percentages. So again, this is how well they check out. So in terms of the number of attempts at a double or going for the bullseye. This is not in chronological order this time. This is in alphabetical order because that's the way the Stata does it. I mean, I'm sure there's a way. But the 3 pretty much in the middle, these are the home tour. And you can again see there is some evidence to suggest that, again, it's lower in those tournaments relative to the other tournaments. And the other thing I thought I'd show you here is there's a Premier League in darts. And it's essentially a league tournament, but for the, I think it's the top 8 players. And what you see here, you have matches taking place over a series of different nights. Again, restricting this to the 2020 season. The first 6 nights were with crowds, and then the remaining 7 through to night 16, and then the playoffs are where matches took place without crowds. So it's a bit more difficult to see if there's a clear difference there, but there just seems to be maybe some kind of variation there, but it's not as striking as it was for the other plots. So really simple, nothing too sophisticated about this. But essentially, we're looking at productivity or performance. So this is measured either as the 3 dart average or the checkout percentage. And we're essentially focusing on beta 2 as our key coefficient here. So does the effect of playing at home have a negative effect on performance, whether that be, as I say, 3 dart average or the checkout percentage? Obviously, we'll also see if crowds matter, but we also want to control for player characteristics. So we've got things like age. James mentioned this morning, apparently there was lots of discussion about ELO yesterday, but unfortunately I missed that. But anyway, we've got an ELO rating in here. The nationality of the players we've got, and then we've got some tournament control. So the event was known as a ranking event, so this would give you ranking points. So ranking points matter in the sense of your what they call the PDC order of merit. So the more ranking points you get, the more your position is higher towards the end of the season, and that matters potentially in order to automatically qualify for the next year of darting events. At stage of the competition, again, if you think about this in terms of incentives, maybe you put more effort in the latter stages of the tournaments because the prize money kind of is higher as you progress. Sorry, Sabrina.
Do you know anything about their home?
What their actual home?
Within home heterogeneity among. So some might be single and some might be having kids around.
Yeah, we don't know. The only bit of information we do know is some players weren't able to compete at home because they had Wi-Fi connectivity problems, for example. We don't know. It's possible we could find out if maybe from the Wikipedia pages if they are married. But we probably wouldn't know when they were married. I mean, we know kind of basic controls like their age and so forth, but I don't think we could get information on the other demographics. Simple regressions. This is a stack regression. So we've got 2 observations per match. So this is making no adjustments for correlation between the error terms here. But what you can see here is that there is a negative and statistically significant effect associated with the home coefficients, particularly for the 3-dot average, but less so, in fact, not significant at all for checkout percentage. ELO, so kind of rating.
I'm still concerned about, is there a height for the board to be? And,
Yeah.
And all these things that probably in competition inside, they're very well measured. Maybe at home they're not. That might, explain a lot.
It's possible. I mean, these are professional darts players, so they'd want to mimic the environment, the positioning of the board, the height, the distance that they're throwing to the board, because they're just cheating themselves, aren't they? Because you want to, if you're practicing at home, you want to practice in the environment which is the same as the environment you'll be faced when you're in the tournament. If they are cheating, then these underestimate. Yeah, these underestimate the effects of so actually it may my results are even better. But they're in the right direction. They're in the right direction, even if you're not convinced that. So they're not positive. So if the home effect was positive here, then I would say, yeah, you're probably right. Maybe they're like a meter away from the board.
Sure. Or I don't. The point is that as long as you cannot see the situation at home, even there's some noise in that.
Absolutely, there is some noise, but it's in the right direction.
I think what Bob is trying to say is that they want to be honest and they want to be as close as possible to the real competition. But maybe they just did not put it on the right height, and therefore they miss. Nothing like psychology or whatever. But the setting is not correct.
But that's the point of the paper. The point of the paper is not about darts. The point of the paper is about working from home, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Don't worry about the darts. Worry about what working from home means.
And then the explanation would be different.
Yeah.
It's not
No.
behavior.
No,
There's be many explanations.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can answer now. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. if I get that far. For the controls kind of matter. So ELO rating, a higher ELO rating, higher performance. That's not as you would expect. Inverted U-shaped relation with age. So obviously, as you get older, you get better, and then obviously some turning point, and the turning point's around about 38, 40. Ranking doesn't appear to matter here. So ranking event, but the quarterfinal stage onwards does, and we do this with and without nationality fixed effects. We do multi-level modelling, you get similar results. We've also done it in terms of splitting player 1 and player 2. So player 1 is the winning player, player 2 is the losing contest. And again, pretty much the results hold up. So this is the 3-dot average. Again, consistently, the working from home has a negative effect. But the checkout percentage, there's a lot more noise here. It's less significant generally.
The crowd effect, which was negative, becomes insignificant when you control for nationality.
Yeah, but only for play. Yes, yeah, only for player 2. Well, actually, whether you've got nationality fixed effects in or not, for players.
So crowd, both for player 1 and 2, crowd used to be significant and then become insignificant. I don't know which slide that one was. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, this one.
Yeah, it's only marginally significant in the second column. So
it's significant once you take care of the nationality fixed effect.
yeah, it's only marginally significant here in terms of the 3-dot average. So I wouldn't pin too much kind of on that. I mean, obviously it's stronger for the checkout percentage, but only for the losing player. So maybe the losing player is kind of affected more by the crowd. Maybe the crowd's on that player more.
I'm sorry, I don't confuse. Why do you have? I mean, when you're at home, you don't have a crowd. Why do you have both? I'm missing something. Why do you have crowd and home in the same regression?
Because we have, in terms of the sample, we have matches which are played at home.
Yeah.
The de facto has no crowd.
Yeah.
Unless it's go back to Super's point, your family are watching. I don't know. You brought your extended family to. So there's three settings.
Okay.
There's home, there's in person with crowds, there's in person without crowds. So going back to what I said earlier, in that 2020 period, start of the season, you had events with crowds. COVID lockdown happened. Darts continued after a briefer pause compared to other sports, but tournaments took place online. Then the darts players came back, but they played in tournaments without crowds.
But then what we are looking for also is the difference between home and crowd, whether the difference is significant. Because now you only show us home compared to without crowd, right? You have home, crowd, and without crowd. Without crowd is the reference group, right?
Yeah.
So the coefficient of home is compared to without crowd.
Yes.
But what's happening with home compared to crowd?
So you want to know whether that difference is,
Yeah.
is significant, essentially.
Post-graduation.
Yeah, check that.
What we saw in the descriptive statistics, it was pretty clear. I mean, the descriptive statistics were pretty convincing. Home, crowd, with crowd, without crowd, broadly the same. And there's a very big, look at that. I mean, it kind of sticks out a mile, doesn't it?
What do we see?
So the red bars are the tournaments where they played at home. Yeah. And the tournaments to the left of the first red bar are in person with crowds. All the blue bars to the right of Home Tour 1 are in person without crowds. So whether you look at the comparison, again, this is just the descriptors, but if you look at the comparisons, you know, as Stefan kindly said, there's a
Doesn't happen very often.
Doesn't happen very often, no.
He's sick.
Yeah, he's definitely sick. Yeah. I maybe should have recorded that for there's a clear diff. Now, what we do know, which is we haven't currently explored in the paper so far, is whether there is any self-selection effects in terms of the players that competed in the home tour. So going back to Subo's point, so it might be to do with family, it might be to do with Wi-Fi connectivity, but what we do know is which players competed. So
because maybe you have in Home Tour 1, Home Tour 2 players with very low ELO, for example.
But we control for ELO here. This is controlling for ELO. So once we've controlled for the quality, Okay, so we're control for the quality.
But
of it.
still, it's such an easy test to
Yeah.
know home versus
Of course,
private.
of
Like,
course. Yeah.
What I just need to add one line about post-integration test, and I think it's going to be significant. It looks like that.
Yeah.
There is a paper by Christian Deutsche and co-authors showing that professional darts players improve their performance under pressure.
Yeah, the choking under pressure paper. Yeah.
That is contrary to what you, for example, have found
in biathlon.
in biathlon. So these guys may be completely different from other, let's say, athletes, if darts has anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Sport is, but that may suggest that their performance is better in front of an audience than at home.
Yeah. Well, what is clear from the paper, I think, we can do some further testing, obviously, but it's clear that competing at home had a negative effect on productivity, particularly the 3-dot average, less so for the checkout. Now, there could be arguments as to why that might be. Maybe they practice more on checkouts at home than scoring intensity. Maybe that might be a possible reason. I know we're getting close to time, and obviously, I don't know if there's any further questions. So what is the kind of tagline? So what's going driving this? Is it simply working from home, or are there other things going on? So the other thing that's going on here potentially is that the PDC home tour events, there was no incentives associated. There was no prize money for those events. So relative to those in-person events, there was no prize money. The only incentive was that the overall winner, certainly the first home tour event, was given automatic entry to one of the major tournaments. That was the only incentive. So the question here is, we can't simply say this is the pure working from home effect, because it might simply be misaligned incentives. It might be a combination of the two. What it does mean, though, is that if it happened again, darts organisers of tournaments where you can play at home, you need to have well-defined incentives in order to kind of improve performance of the players. And that's one of the other kind of messages from the paper. This will only make sense to people in the UK of a certain age, maybe. There is a video there. I'm not going to play that video because that will just wipe out any academic credibility I had left. But I have it anyway, so I'm not going to play that video. But thank you for listening. That's myself. I think we're about 1 o'clock, but maybe a couple of questions.
I'll just make an announcement. But he said, so in 15 minutes, we've got the Department of Culture in here from the UK government, and then at 2 p.m. we've got the keynote speaker in the other room, as far as I know. So, and if you are staying here for lunch, I waited in one of the rooms yesterday till about 1:45, so there was still food over at Eat at the Square, and I think they're still serving after 2 o'clock. So it's just a pitch, basically.
Okay. Super.
Where will be the keynote?
The keynote will be upstairs at 2 o'clock. But there's other.
I think we'll wrap it.
You brought it down here.
I think we'll.
You could bring my work down here. Yeah, here. And you come down here, then definitely there will see something.
Okay, I'll assume the standing up means no more questions. So enjoy the lunch.
We did ask a lot.
You did ask a lot of questions during, yes.
One thing that can be done, you can find out the ex ante probability that somebody will win the